Well, hello, everybody. Happy holidays and everything else. Welcome to the Greyscalegorilla podcast. And today we have Chad Ashley here with us. How you been there, buddy?
Doing good.
Looking good. And Chris Schmidt, how are you, sir?
Doing well, staying warm.
Yeah, you know what? I feel festive today. I got the scarf on. I'm feeling it's a little chilly in here. The weather's getting cold. And I got to start by letting everybody know that we just announced today our end of the year 40% off Greyscalegorilla sale.
40%?
Say what?
Crazy.
Oh my goodness. If you want to save 40% on everything from Greyscalegorilla, put this date in your calendar, December 12th. We're pre-announcing the sale so that you have plenty of time to figure out what you want. Get all the credit cards ready, start, asking the boss, maybe buy them early, Christmas present, warm them up a little bit. Get ready for December 12th. It's going to be 40% off. It's 24 hours only. It starts at 10 a.m. Central on December 12th through the next day at 10 Central. Everything in the store is 40% off. This does exclude X particles, but that's always hard because we don't own X particles. But everything else in the store is going to be 40% off, including new training, including new plugins that we've launched over the year. Everything. Go in there, make your cart, get ready. If you have any questions, please don't forget to hit up support all week. We get a lot of people the day of the sale that have questions about bundle pricing and student discounts and all that stuff. And we want to help, but it's so hard to do the day of because there's so many. So make sure if you have any questions, hit up support this week. That'll actually help us out, help you out, get all the answers ready so that you can pull the trigger on December 12th. Last thing I'll say is if you want any other details, head to grayscalegorilla.com/sale. And there you'll find a post that spells out a little bit more about the sale. And on December 12th, make sure you head back to that blog post, or if you're on our newsletter, we're going to email it out as well. We're going to have a special discount code that'll allow you to get the 40% off. So I had to start off right away because, I'm excited about it.
Big.
It's a big day. Big day. Anyway, big week for us, big week for everything. We're here getting ready in the holiday spirit, getting towards the end of the year, and hope you have some money saved over from all that Black Friday stuff going down.
I don't.
Are you?
Chris is tapped out.
You're done. Did you get your 3D printer and everything, Chris?
No, it doesn't arrive till the end of January, sadly. But that's because I was getting I'm getting the new version of it, which
so
is
new
only
it
just
doesn't
starting to ship.
exist.
It's printing itself right now.
It is. Actually, it is. They do that. A bunch of the parts are 3D printed, and they have a gigantic render farm of their own machines making more machines. That's pretty amazing.
Can a 3D printer print itself? Like while it's being... Could that... That's an existential question, I guess.
I think it's an engineering question. And...
That's the best ever.
And I think it would have to be done before it could continue. But I think there are, outside of the motors, you can make an entirely 3D printed printer. But obviously the electronics need to be separate.
Nice.
Look at my list here because we're oh, I remember now. Wait, hold on. I remember now. Last week, I wanted to bring this up really quick. Last week's podcast, we came up with this theory that turned out to be pretty interesting, and it spurred a lot of discussion. And it's the idea that if you make a triangle and you put more money on one side of the triangle, work-life balance on the other side of the triangle, and good work on the other side of the triangle, that one of the goals as a creative person in your career is to try to get as close to the center of that triangle as possible. And if you haven't heard that podcast where we're talking about this theory, it sparked a lot of good discussion, and it started getting people thinking about where they are in that in that circle and how to move closer to, maybe you are doing really good work, but you're just working so many hours, you're not able to spend it with friends or family, how to start to move those things around. So if you haven't heard that podcast, definitely go back and check out last week where we talk about that, and check out the comments on YouTube as well, because there's some really good, long form discussions on, frankly, a lot of stories that you guys shared with us on transitioning from one part of that circle to another. So I just want to thank everybody.
I gotta go look at those comments myself.
Look at them comments,
man. That was it. I feel like we came upon something that is pretty universal in this industry, and it's almost I was actually surprised at how many people said they were pretty close to the center, and I'm like, wow, that's awesome, man. Like, don't move, just like stay there, because that's a really good place to be. And then there's some people that at different points in their life they have to be at certain weights on the diagram, just because things happen. And
well, when you're young, you can like get rid of the work-life balance and just go crazy working all the crazy hours.
Exactly. But it is kind of an interesting thing to like go back and look at and say, well, I'm going to check in with myself and see where I sit on this. And if I'm, and usually you would do this if you're unhappy, because if you're happy, you're not even thinking about it. You're just like, whatever. But if you're unhappy at work, maybe it's time to take a look at that diagram and try to plot where you are. Maybe that'll help you understand why you're not happy.
Well, also, we just had Thanksgiving go by. You shouldn't only think about it when you're not happy. You should be like, hey, wait a minute. I'm happy right now. You should appreciate that. Like, just in the same way you don't appreciate that you're healthy until you're not healthy.
That's
and even when you get, whatever, you get some, you bang your knee and your knee hurts for a month and it just kind of fades away and you don't think about it. And that day after it fades away, you gotta be like, hey, my knee doesn't hurt anymore. And I should appreciate the fact that it doesn't.
I'm so not that person. I wish I was that person, but I'm the out of sight, out of mind person. That like I could like, I don't know, stub my toe on the end table and be like, oh my God, this damn end table. And then the next week I will have not moved the end table. I would it's like all but gone from my memory. And a week later I'll stub my toe on that same
the weekly toe stubbing.
I'm like, I need to get better at that.
Yeah, it makes you feel alive. I think a little bit of pain here and there is always good for humanity.
Makes you feel alive.
Yeah. Like it's like a good hangover. You need one every couple months or so, because
an Evanescence song from the 1990s, I think.
What? Good hangover?
No, like I need pain to feel alive or something. That sounds like a lyric from like.
You know about it.
It sounds like it.
Don't take it too far, but hey, when you are healthy, everything's contrast, right? There is no light without dark. There is no health without pain, right? There wouldn't be a word for it if we didn't have the other side. So I like that, to be thankful.
Yeah.
That was last week.
Yeah. So what else? What other announcements we get?
Oh my goodness, we also just like last year during our end of the year sale, we kind of did an experiment last year that we're going to do again this year. So I guess it's less of an experiment, but we're going to do live shows. Chris and me, Chad, all doing live shows during the day of the sale, partly to just answer questions about the sale, anything you guys want to learn about our products or our training. We like doing the live stuff because we can answer it right away, really quickly, but it's also really fun. We're going to schedule it. It's going to be on our live page. So if you go to greyscalegorilla.com/live, you're going to see a full schedule there through the end of the year, not just other tutorials that we already have planned, but three shows in a row on December 12th. So even if you're out there and you're like, guys, I already got all your stuff. I'm already using all your stuff. I'm watching all your stuff. Come join us, because if you have any questions about the sale, first of all, come join us. But again, it's good. It's just going to be fun. It's going to be a fun day of learning and playing and answering questions and hanging out with our audience.
3 hours of Cinema 4D straight. It's crazy.
Non-stop. So yeah, come on by. We'd love to see you guys. And I think we're going to do it again this year, where we mix it up between different live show channels. So maybe Facebook, YouTube, Twitch. What else?
What else is there?
Justin TV.
Go back to Ustream, maybe? No, never again.
Oh man, those were the days. All right, comment below if you remember the Ustream days. Anyway, that's this week.
Wait, there's one more this week. Wasn't there a little Oh, yeah, you said you had a little bit of Render Wars to do.
Chad, is there Render Wars update?
I do, but want to hear Chris do that sound again.
No, I did it. I did it. I planned it this time so we didn't go back and do it. Don't call it out.
That's the best part about it.
That's my favorite part about it, dude. I can't not call it out. All right. So yeah, Render Wars update. What do we got? Okay, a lot of new things coming out, a lot of updates. So I'll start with Octane. Octane released 3.08 test version that's got some pretty interesting updates, a new OSL texture projection update, some new tune shading abilities, which I have not checked out yet. Looking forward.
I haven't seen it either.
Let's see. It's got a new ability to support custom LUTs. So we're going to take a look and see if our Grayscale Gorilla grade LUTs will work in there. I have not checked out yet. Hopefully they will, which would be pretty cool to be able to actually load our LUTs in Octane.
On sale December 12th.
Yeah, exactly. And there's a new simplified mixed material system that looks pretty interesting. So pretty decent update from Octane. Redshift, in the Redshift news, they've announced and started talking about custom AOVs, and the new version actually has a new AOV workflow, which is much improved over the previous workflow.
AOV? Question mark?
Yes, if you're wondering what an AOV is, that stands for arbitrary output variable, a very fancy term for passes, basically setting up different passes, whether it's custom passes or diffuse, reflection, refraction, matte passes, that sort of thing. That's what an AOV is. So if you've heard that term and wondered what it is, now you know. And in Arnold news, they've been leaking a lot of images about their new tune shading abilities, which is not necessarily been given a time or date of release yet, but it is something that has been looking really interesting. Lee Griggs has been kicking out some really killer tune shaded renders for them on their Twitter, so I'm very much looking forward to checking that out very soon. And that's all I got for Render Wars.
That's quite a bit.
That's a big update. It's been a little slow toward the end of the year, but then everyone's getting their last minute punches in before the end of the year. Maybe the budget's going in to decide what render is going on. And it might be a good time to bring up too, we still get questions all the time. The Render Wars landscape is constantly changing. That's why we're trying to always keep you updated. If you are unclear, if you have more questions about all these different renders, maybe which one to start learning or start playing with, don't forget about our article called, and I want to mess up the name here. Chad, do you have the official name of this article here?
Oh, man, you put me on the spot.
Put you on the spot.
I will find it. Just stall.
What render should I use? Cinema 4D. I'm gonna let Google. Look at this. Google.
Did it work?
Google, man. Those guys smart.
Those guys are doing it right.
Yeah, so I typed in it's called what render should I use in Cinema 4D? So you type that in somehow in Google. Well, we're also going to have, of course, show notes. If you're listening, we always try to keep some good show notes and any links that we're talking about to always keep those. So if you're watching here on YouTube, it's going to be down in the description. If you're listening to us on iTunes, first of all, thank you for all the comments and reviews lately on the podcast. Always appreciate that. And second of all, you could find them in your podcast app. Most podcast apps will just be able to see the notes as well. So any links that we're mentioning will be there. But if to finish my thought, if you want to start to learn more about these render stuff, we have what render should I use in Cinema 4D. It's going to try to point you in the right direction depending on what you're doing inside of Cinema 4D. There really isn't a perfect answer. There's not a everybody should use X render kind of answer. And Chad did a really good job of spelling out some of the pros and cons of each of them. And this is where we're going to keep this updated. So this isn't just like where the industry is when it was posted. We're going to try to stay on top of this and make sure as many things that we're pointing you in the right direction, no matter when you're reading this. So definitely check it out.
There used to be a nifty quiz at the bottom of this, but I've had a few people call that out that it's no longer active. I'm going to see what I can do to find a place to put that quiz, because the quiz company that we were using kind of got rid of the tier that we were on. So I'm going to try to get that going again. That was a lot of fun. We had a lot of people using that. So I'm on it. I'm looking for a replacement.
Love it. Look at this. Got some. You guys are always doing cool stuff. There's an HDRI link image at the bottom of this article. Look at that. Hey, good reminder. If you have HDRI link and you've been looking at our HDRI packs, sale December 12th. Put it on the calendar. All right, we should. What are we doing today? Podcast? Is this what we're doing?
I think so.
Am I in the right room?
Is this the right planet?
So, as always, we're trying to find topics to help the motion designer, the 3D artist out there, try to help you do your best work. And as always, it's not always about what software you use. I know we talk a lot about render wars, we talk about a lot about Cinema 4D, but it's also about how you use this stuff. And I think Chad, I'll probably pass it off to you. You had kind of a question or a theory, something to kind of spark a discussion that was really interesting. Do you want to kind of set this one up for today's topic?
Yeah. It kind of came to me because I'm a beta tester of a lot of different softwares, and I'm fortunate enough to be parts of these different betas. And I've learned some things about being in these betas that I think should be, or I think it's valuable to talk about, even if you're not. And that is, you should always be trying to break stuff. And that mentality, I think, is really important in creative work, because the only way you're going to test yourself and get better and push your boundaries is if you're breaking things, and not necessarily just trying to see if you can make Cinema 4D crash. But I think you should do that. That's something you should be doing.
Save often.
Yeah, but pushing things to the point where they break is healthy, because you don't get better, you don't learn if you're not doing these things. And just a little context. So what I mean by that is, like, as a beta tester for our software and other softwares, is I always try to push it as far as I can, and see how far I can make it flex before it snaps. And I also like to do that with production too. I like to try to push it as far as I can, and be ready to fix the problems or solve the problems when they happen. So I guess it was just an idea I had about a question, I guess, more likely, more than anything, just to ask people, are you doing what you can every day to break things? Because I think that's a really healthy thing. If you're just, doing the status quo and just sort of going through the motions, then maybe you're not doing all you can to get better. Because if you're not crashing an app or breaking the process and having to figure out a major problem, then maybe you're not doing all that you could be doing.
Is there a distinction? Because I know how to crash cinema. Ask Chris, man. I'll figure it out. You put everything into a soft body dynamics, and then if that doesn't do it, you put that in a cloner. and then into soft body dynamics, put more tags on it. I'll figure out how to crash it, but that doesn't seem as helpful creatively as trying to find the boundaries, right? Like, and that's kind of what you're saying. Like, find the boundaries of how far you can push it.
Right. Right.
And try to find a way around the problem. Because in a way, maybe I'm mistaken what you're saying. In a way, you're saying, get yourself into a pinch, because then you're going to find a creative solution out of it.
That's exactly my point. I think that's actually, for once, see what, like, you usually take what I say and, like, well, you kind of did it again.
Make it more complicated. Yeah. That's what I usually do. Or just repeat it.
No, this actually works though. But yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's like, because like you just said it. You can't really. Well, here, say it again. Say it again, because I feel like I'm not going to say it as well either the second time.
No, I think we're agreeing on this, which sometimes we do. Finding where your boundaries are. You can only do it if you push further than you did before. And in some ways, if I'm hearing you right, and I'm kind of hearing what we're talking about today, it's finding ways to use the tools you already know how to use in new ways. And one of the ways that you could do that is to push those tools as hard as they can until something doesn't work the way that you think it should. And then the goal is not to break it and go, I did it. The goal is to break it and go, okay, now how do I get around it? What's the way around this? So if I want 100,000 things on the screen at once, and MoGraph dies if I try to push too many particles into it, and I don't have X particles to solve this problem, how do I get around it? Well, now you can think in a new way and say, okay, what if I do this in passes and I do 10,000, I only render out 10,000 at a time, and then I use that in After Effects and I can clone it all together and make a crowd out of it.
Right.
Those are the solutions. Maybe I'm getting too specific with that, but those are the solutions where you can start to learn things you don't already know. And so that's how I'm hearing you say, like, don't just break it to break it to figure out a way around it.
Yeah, I think you should. I think you should also break it and report that you broke it so that software people can make it better. But yeah, that's the ultimate point of what I'm trying to get to is you should be breaking it so that you can learn your way around it. You can't really you can't necessarily, you can't just walk up to a bridge and have the bridge break and be like, well, that's broke, I'm out, you know, like
that's a Calvin and Hobbes strip. It's how do you know what the bridge weighs? It's Dad, how do they know what a bridge weighs? And he goes, they keep driving heavier and heavier trucks over it until it collapses, and then they rebuild the bridge. But in a way, when you're doing software stuff, that is the way you do it. You push the limits, you push the limits, you push the limits, and then you hit that limit. And you're like, now I know where that limit is. Let me start trying to find ways around it.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Yeah, and I think it's something that we all sort of naturally do here at GSG, but it's something that I think a lot of people don't think about, or they don't even realize that they're doing, that is a really important, I think, part of growing and getting better. And working with teams makes that easier too, because sometimes doing that in a vacuum can be really, really hard if you don't have somebody to lean over and say, hey, I just drove up to this point in the bridge and the whole thing collapsed. Like, what do you think I should like build a bigger bridge, or should I go build a bridge downriver? Like, so it's just an important thing, I think, to talk about and think about in terms of your process.
Yeah, and in a lot of ways, you're describing the creative process in general, which is how do you come up with great ideas, and how do you come up with creative ideas? And in a lot of ways, it's breaking the current concept of ideas and turning it on its head, or doing the opposite, or thinking about the opposite. And in another way, it's almost literally what you're saying, which is like, just break the convention. So like, think about creative ideas that come out in the world. A lot of times they're anti the establishment. They're anti what has, like, there'll be a really photoreal 3D thing for a long time, and then all of a sudden this real cartoony feel comes along because it's breaking the standard. It's pushing against what people expect. So I think this, in some ways, is expandable to a lot of things. If you are doing your job and it goes really well for too long, that might not be a good thing.
Right.
As a related thing, by the way, I think I crashed cinema. I was trying to crash it while you're talking. You just throw a sphere into a metaball, set it to 0.001, and then make it editable. It might not be crashed. It might just take like 9 hours to process. But
Chris knows.
That's just a memory thing, though. You know, like that. It's just running out of.
Well, what's the difference between the two? If it's never going to figure itself out, then
yeah. Does anybody really know what time it is?
There's easy ways, I think, to like you just did. You can crash anything if you really
put enough zeros on it.
Put enough zeros into it. But I guess the idea is that to think like a beta tester all the time, where you should always be looking for new ways to kind of push it, whether put it being the 3D application they're using, the creative endeavor that you're going down or whatnot, but kind of applying that same mentality to your work.
The applied mentality is actually something that I somewhat struggle with, where I will push the limits all the time. In Cinema 4D, I'm constantly pushing the limits in all directions. And then I tend to take the stuff and think of it in a very practical way afterward. And as a point of contrast, I'm always fascinated when somebody goes and essentially breaks something. They go into, let's just say in Cinema 4D, and you make something and you get a weird artifact, and it's like, that's not supposed to happen, but I'm going to take that thing and now do an artistic version of it, and essentially take something that is a mistake or a limitation or an artifact of some sort, and now put it in a frame and hang it on the wall and be like, look, art, like I've pushed the limit to this place. And my brain doesn't work that way, but I'm always kind of fascinated, especially when I'm like, I did that same mistake 2 years ago. And like, so on one level, it's like, that's a really simple thing to do. But on the other hand, it's like, but they thought about it in a creative way that actually did make it engaging, that turned it useful.
Well, I think though, in a way, that is what Chad's describing, which is the only way you're going to find something new that you can do differently from other people is not to necessarily read the manual more. It's to find creative ways to break it and to mash it up with other ideas. And so I think that is what if I'm hearing it right, that is what Chad's describing for example, we all have tried putting a soft body tag on something and dropping it, and somehow you don't have enough samples and it explodes and it starts to triangulate and like blow up everywhere. Chris, you've seen me do this 100 times.
Geez, yeah. I mean, that happens to everybody who has two soft bodies in the scene, like for sure.
Right. And if you haven't, pause this and go do it. It's really cool. And it's really beautiful. When it explodes in all these little shards and it goes crazy. And the only way that you're going to learn how soft bodies work is to go break it like that and go, okay, why did it break? And so in some ways, I think what we're talking about is, okay, now you broke soft bodies. How do you fix it? Well, then you're going to learn how to turn up your geometry. You're going to learn how to turn up your samples, how to calculate more frames per step, like all the little things you could do for your soft bodies to clean it up. But also to Chris's point, you now have a really cool creative way to make all this weird geometry jump around the screen. And maybe there's a creative way that your next client will be able to use that technique. And you know what I mean? So there's multiple angles to this, and it's just going to give you more, tools in your tool belt when your client asks you for something interesting that they haven't seen before. You might be able to do it because you've seen something new that nobody else has seen. And secondarily, if you really know how to fix that problem, now you are technically more able to solve a more technical soft body problem that maybe your somebody else, another freelancer won't be able to solve because they were stuck doing it the quote right way the whole time, and they never knew how to fix it when it broke.
I think that's an important facet to this discussion. I think is that you let's use Man versus Machine and the amazing abstract work that they do as an example. I think because I don't think they set out with sometimes I'm sure they have set out with very clear goals, a storyboard, a piece of concept art to go after that, but a lot of the really cool stuff that they've done came from experimentation. It came from testing and pushing and breaking. And from that, you get gems. And if you're not out there mining, if you're not out there pushing it, you're not going to find those gems. You're not going to find that unique thing that it does when you do this and this that you can't get any other way. You won't find it unless you're out there like messing around and breaking it. And it's a really important part. I remember like kind of telling my team back when I was at a studio, if you had free time, experiment, just make some weird stuff, like push some feature, some aspect of the software too far and see what happens. Try to get out of a pickle, try to paint yourself into a corner and get out and flex those muscles. Cause it's something that they don't teach, and you learn how to use the software you don't necessarily learn how to use. No, I was really deep and stupid. I was gonna see if I could deliver that with a straight face, but I couldn't do it. But yeah, you know what I'm going for.
Yeah, from both sides of the spectrum, I have two quick stories I'll share. When I was starting learning After Effects, Cinema 4D, one of the ways that I tried to break things when I was watching a lot of tutorials was to watch a tutorial, learn something new. Let's say it's soft bodies, and then not just follow the tutorial and do it right, because of course that works. Like it worked for them, it worked for me. If I followed along right, then I'm just what I call it is I followed the recipe. And if you follow the recipe and you do it right, well, of course you're going to have the same chocolate chip cookies, or in this case, soft body dynamics that the person that taught it did it. And so while that's cool and while the cookies might be good, you're not really going to be called a chef until you make something unique where you can combine different elements. So what I would do right away is take what I just learned and then mash it up with another tutorial. So I wasn't good enough to know how to break things directly, but what I would do is say, okay, well, that was cool, this little soft body thing. What happens when you put soft bodies in a cloner? Can I clone 3 soft bodies on top of each other and have them all smashed together? Well, that presents a unique challenge. Okay, well, now I have it's running slower and it brings in other, complications, but now I'm trying to learn something new that the recipe didn't tell me directly. And that's an early way that I tried to break things. Really, and Chris will tell you, I'll put everything in a cloner. I put all of our plugins in a cloner because I know some of you out there is just going to do it. What happens when you put Lightkit Pro in a cloner? So in some ways that's just my tendency. And I'll just bring up a different situation because I think we're all in different parts of our career. We do that now. And I guess I just told you a story. We do that now with our plugins, and the way that we work is we push it as hard as we can to try to break it, because we know that some creative person out there is going to use one of our tools, like Transform is a good example, in a way that we never even intended them to use it. So we want to make sure that it's compatible with as many things. So we try to break it ourselves, and we learn things about our own code and our own internal workings that we could do better and learn from by trying to break it on purpose.
Yeah, I think we lost Chris, but yeah, it's an interesting idea. It's like trying to think that way, and getting back to the recipe metaphor, I think is really interesting because I'm learning Substance Designer right now, and I'm having a blast learning that software. And the way that I like to learn software is very much, I like to kind of break down the components and learn the ingredients and make the cookies the way that somebody in the recipe shows me. And then I kind of break down the recipe and I'm like, oh, so that's how they're using flour. Okay, I wonder if I could use flour over here like this. And like, and then once you kind of like get an idea of how these recipes come together and how you're applying the different steps to make these cookies, it's that ability later from practice and just lots of practice and lots of mistakes and lots of breaking and lots of like, wow, that doesn't look anything like what I thought it was going to. Only then will you get to a place after a lot of time and effort where you can make up your own recipe. And
that works so well, like as the kind of cooking analogy, where like I have a couple things I tinker around with cooking, but then
nope, I think we lost him again.
Oh man, this is the part of the episode where Chris has microphone problems. Actually,
he was just about to say the most important thing, and his face is stuck. If you're not watching, his face is stuck, like about to formulate this thought. So hopefully he'll be back in a second.
I just hit him on the Slack there.
His Comcast he's been having some Comcast woes as of late.
New tool.
He was in and out.
I don't think he's not aware.
He's unaware.
Quickly, as we get Chris back together here, it's reminding me of a blog post I wrote. I just looked it up. I wrote this in 2008.
Wow.
Which is amazing. I think this was before I did even After Effects tutorials on this website. But it's called Stop Watching and Start Doing. No More Cooking Shows. And it goes through a little bit of this analogy on basically what I just said about not just following the recipe to a T, because you're really not learning as much as you are as if you experimented and tried to put, what happens if you put cinnamon in this recipe, and what happens if you put lime in this recipe. That's when you're going to start to make something that is your own. For a lot of you, looking for your style, looking for how you make something more unique. It will never be unique if you don't try to at least mash things together and put something in that's unexpected or that hasn't been done. And so if you want to read it, it's in the show notes. I just put it in there, and it's called Stop Watching and Start Doing. Anyway, if that's helpful for anybody, I'll put those in the notes. And well, let's see how Chris is doing. Chris, how you feeling?
I've had Comcast out 5 times this month.
And
I'm not exaggerating.
Oh man, that's frustrating. The thing is you had you had the extra passion. So I'm going to shut up and see if your mic's working, and let you continue going through that. Do you remember where you were?
Oh, dude, he's out again. This is so bad.
Oh man.
God dang. God.
Sorry, Chris. Sorry, buddy. Hey, Chad, maybe you could share something early in your career and something now in your career where there's an example of what we're talking about, where you push something and learn something new.
Oh, okay. Let's see. I think probably early, I would say that I was a one-man 3D department at a post house in Chicago, and I think every day I was kind of forced to push everything to its limit because I was the only 3D artist at the facility. So I didn't really know what was too much to ask for in terms of what they would come at me with work, and I didn't know any better. So anything that came into my room, I would just try to figure it out, and through that, I just kind of learned a lot of hard lessons about how to cut corners and how to cheat because I didn't have this and I didn't have time to do that. So I was constantly testing myself in what I could get away with. That was kind of my effects background helping inform my 3D skills at the time. Like, what could I get away with in comp? What could I get away with if I shot this element? So it was a lot of like that sort of problem solving. And then as I started to sort of maintain or sort of like nurse this beta mentality throughout my career and started to actually become a beta tester, I think more recently I use a lot of those same skills when I'm testing our own software. So I'll come at it from a completely different perspective than maybe Chris would have, because I've been doing production for a long time. So I'll come at it from a couple different aspects that maybe weren't thought about. And I'll also stress test a lot of the more recently the renderers that I use. I stress test them in ways that I would want that I would be using it in production. So, for instance, the Happy Toolbox animation that Chris and I did, I stress tested Redshift and Arnold in that, and Arnold came out on top. It wasn't anything to do with it was a matter of like me trying to push it to a limit and then not be beholden to one decision strictly because of my allegiance to that software. It was about getting the job done, so I had to pivot. So it's about learning along the way, not being afraid to kind of pivot and move to a different thing. And that's kind of that mentality that I think I've always tried to maintain, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think in some ways you're describing how to make yourself uncomfortable on purpose.
I guess
that might be another way. Might be another way.
What a breakthrough!
Well, it just might be another way to think about this. It's not, because to me the breaking of the software is a part of it, but what that shows is that you're now in an environment that is unfamiliar. And so when you're in that environment, how do you now get out? Or like you said, you paint yourself in a corner. How do you get out of it? So by breaking things or mashing things together or pushing on limits, you're finding yourself in new doors and in new worlds that you can explore creatively, but also learn how to get back out. Because and this is the important bit, because when the client comes to ask you if you could do certain things and you've already been in that cave and you've made it back out alive, then you can actually with confidence say, yeah, dude, I could figure it out. And even better than that, if you've gotten in enough caves and figured out how to get yourself out, then if they bring you something that you've never done before, you could say with way more confidence, yeah, I could do that. Because
right. That's an excellent point. I mean, when you said that, I was like, wow, yeah, that's so true. I think my biggest fear in my entire career is not knowing how to do something. So that fear made me want to try to do everything and like figure out, like break stuff, go down this path. Oh, that didn't work. Let me try this. I went from Maya to Softimage to 3ds Max, now to Cinema 4D, tried Nuke, try. I mean, like, that's just the nature of me, is like, my biggest fear is not being able to do what's in my head. So I'm just going to try to learn everything.
So, like, when you're saying you keep traveling down all these dark caves to discover this or discover that or discover this, eventually you can be this confident in your ability to navigate dark caves.
Right. Yeah. I guess that's
yeah, you could put the explorer badge on your arm and stand up in front of a meeting with confidence and say, yeah, I'm an explorer. Like, whatever you bring to us, we will figure out how to do it. And that's a much different path, or that's a much different energy than only saying yes to things that you've already done in the past. And it's a way more fun energy too.
it's
Frankly,
scary, but it's fun. You know, it's
I know the projects that I worked on that I'm really proud of are in a lot of ways the ones where, like, I don't know, like, this is going to be really crazy, but then because the system is broken, because you're in a new cave, your brain starts thinking of creative ways to get out. And now we're back at this MacGyver thing again, but it does come down to understanding how tools work. And if you only use a hammer to hit nails, then you can't be MacGyver again. You got to learn how these tools work, like doing things that they're maybe not made to do, or maybe how they combine together with other tools, and how can you what can you do with a wrench and a hammer together? Well, maybe something that you couldn't do with each separately. And so thinking about your tools and what they can do and how they interact with each other, how they break together, and mashing them up enough to get yourself into a mess is in some ways we're describing the whole creative process. It's why, like, 5-second projects, I think, was so successful, because we gave some sort of cave, some sort of little room for you to play in and say, you have to use these two ingredients. And now, to mix even more metaphors, my wife's been watching the show Chopped, and I think I'm saying the right show. But on this show, they give you things that you have to use in your recipe. And what's the original one? What's the original show that did this? The
Iron Chef, maybe?
Iron Chef. Thank you. So Iron Chef, they're like, you got to make this like steak, but oh no, you got to put like fish scales in it or whatever they give you. Those are the things you need to do yourself. You have to put yourself into those situations and go, well, I got to make a dessert, but I also have to use garlic in it. How do I do that? How do I make a dessert still taste good and use garlic in it? And getting yourself into those messes and getting yourself out elegantly is a lot of why people hire you. Having those skills to go, well, it's got to look cool, but it also is heart medicine. And you're like, oh no, this got to look cool, and it's like a drug thing. Well,
cool
now
heart medicine, man.
This is gonna be the coolest looking heart medicine. So I'll stop with the dang metaphors because there's too many. And
I'm getting confused what we're talking.
are we in a cooking show now? And I'll pass it off to Chris because I think we might actually have some decent internet for you, buddy.
It's all or nothing over here. I'm gonna be giving Comcast another angry call. See if I can get one of the managers.
When we said break stuff, I didn't mean your internet connection.
For a second, I was like, "Oh, did cinema like processing get me?" But I had already stopped that a while back. By the way, there are a bunch of actual garlic desserts, so that's intriguing.
So there you go.
There you go.
We got a whole new thing. Well, Chris, I'm sorry we got you cut off. We're gonna wrap up. This
I apologize.
A little bit short, but I wanted to make sure if there was anything else. Do you have a story maybe early on or recent of something that you pushed that turned into something interesting or creative or something you learned?
It's for me, it's general, and honestly, a lot of people can go and see me do that live and any of the recorded SGSGs, or when the eventual GSG season 4 pops on. The all the time, it's like, wait, this looks cool. This is interesting. There's something weird here. Let's tinker with it. Let's break it. Let's push it too far. It's like, okay, we're going to use that at some point, and then at some point, go back and try and use it. But a lot of the time in this podcast, we've been talking about this through the lens of software. But honestly, I think it just, it all comes down to, don't push the limits of the software, push your limits. You think you can only do this thing up to this point, push it further. And it's not like you have to jump off the deep end, but just take that one step further than you did the time before.
Yeah, I like that.
That's good advice.
I like that. And I think the reason I bring up all these silly analogies is because if somebody out there is into cooking or into music or into into working out or whatever, and you could bring an analogy to them and say like, well, when you can do 10 push-ups, the goal is not to do 10 more push-ups like the next time faster. The goal is now to either do like 20 push-ups, or the goal is to do push-ups with your feet on the wall to make them harder. And that's the goal. The goal is to like get to where you are and find that boundary and push yourself, because you won't find, like Chris said, you won't find how much the bridge can hold until you break it. And so where is that for you? Where have you found your limit? Have you found your creative limit? Have you found your technical limit? And you won't know, and none of us will know unless we continue to push our boundaries creatively, technically, all these things. So yeah, I think there's something here. I definitely, that feeling of being uncomfortable and being able to get yourself out of a situation, for me, is one of those things I was so uncomfortable with when it first happened. But every time it worked, and I'm like, wow, we all sat in a room, we come up with an idea to get around this, and it worked. We were more confident the next time. We did better work together, and there's something there. So I'm glad you brought this up, Chad.
Me too.
That was good. Well, let's wrap this one up. We'll make this a shorter one today. Unless anybody has anything else to add, we'll wrap this one up. And just want to thank you again as we're getting toward the end of the year. This podcast has been really interesting. I know I'm speaking for all of us, really interesting for us to talk about these topics. We always have fun coming up with these ideas and discussing them. And we get a lot of feedback from you. Thank you for all the feedback over the year. And hey, don't forget, the sale is coming up. We rarely do a big sale like this. And if you've been looking at our tools, our products, our training, please go to greyscalegorilla.com/sale. This is December 12th for 24 hours only. We're going to have 40% off. Hope to see you there. Let us know on our support page if you have any questions about that. We're all here waiting to answer all those questions. And with that, I would like to invite you to the very next Grayscale Gorilla podcast. I hope to see you there, and I hope to see you smiling. Really, I just want you to be happy. It's all I've ever wanted for you. From all of us here at Grayscale Gorilla Podcast, have a good week. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye.